the city engineer, and the city attorney. The meeting agenda was posted on the website at www.lambertville.nj.org, the bulletin board at City Hall, and a copy was placed in the elevator room at City Hall. This meeting will be recorded using Zoom. The meeting agenda offers planned action items of the governing body to the extent known at the time of publication. And now, would you like a roll call?
Yes, please.
Councilwoman Lambert?
Here.
Councilman Sanders?
Here.
Councilman Stegman?
Here.
Council President Taylor is trying to log on, and Mayor Fall.
Here.
Okay.
Can I get, Cindy, would you mind reading the
Sure.
resolution?
Sure. This is asking for a motion to go into close, authorizing a closed session at the March 2, 2021 session of the Lambertville City Council to discuss personnel and attorney-client issues related to contracts pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12B 7 and 8.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, see you in the other meeting. Folks, I think we're just waiting for members of council to log on. We'll be able to start soon. Okay. So Cindy, we've already read our statement of compliance. If we could do another roll call. Thank you.
Councilwoman Lambert?
Here.
Councilman Sanders?
Here.
Councilman Stegman?
Here.
Council President Taylor?
Here.
Mayor Fall.
Here. Can I ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that you remain standing for a moment of silence for those in our military and armed forces who are fighting at home and abroad, and also for those who are fighting on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. I have a couple of just very brief questions for Cindy before we get kicking on our agenda here. Cindy, are we pushing the resolution regarding the liquor transfer to the next
That's correct.
meeting?
So
Okay.
this is the public hearing and they noticed for the February 18th, which is why we have to carry it on our agenda until they close. So at this point, as of today, they still don't have a closing date. So we'll carry that to the March 18th meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. Just so folks know, we're only doing sort of some very necessary and time-sensitive resolutions. We won't be hearing resolution number 50 today. There's a refund that we'll process, and that is about it. So, are there any questions from the council regarding the tax refund?
Mayor, there's actually two resolutions. One's a tax resolution, and then the other is the redemption of a tax lien. So there's two, 51.
I
and
see
52.
here resolution number 51, and I see the resolution number 52 is the tax lien. Okay, are there questions about either resolution 51 or 52?
No.
Hearing none, can I get a motion to pass resolution 51 and 52?
So moved.
Councilman Lambert for the first,
Second.
Councilman Stegman for the second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes. Great. Okay, we are also going to be pushing off items A and B until a later date, likely our March 18th hearing, as we currently don't have any ongoing considerations for alternate sites for the police department. So I'm going to ask us to promote our community advisory team chairs, Sarah Gold and Mr. Cool. They'll be giving us a brief presentation on the community advisory team, and then we'll open up that discussion.
Great. Should we go ahead and get started, Mayor?
I think we should. Here he is. Okay, I was worried that Paul wasn't coming in. Since I'm going to spend quite a bit of time with him this week, I want to make sure he was on both meetings. All right.
All right.
Go ahead.
So we will go ahead and get started here. So today, first of all, thank you so much for having us to do this presentation this evening. We're really excited to share these survey results with you. To get started today, we're going to be reporting back on the CAT's outreach to the community regarding the Clausen property, the possible acquisition. So we engaged in 2 different outreach methods. We did a survey, and then we also did office hours. So we hosted 3 office hours. They weren't well attended. We actually didn't get any attendees for those. So today we're really just going to be focusing on the results of this survey that we distributed and conducted. So we're going to begin by going over how the survey was developed and what our methodology was, and then we're going to present our results. So in order to develop this survey, first the CAT communications team drafted the survey, and then we had the mayor and the members of council review the survey to ensure that we were gathering information that would be useful for the governing body. Lastly, the full CAT reviewed the survey. We are going to go over now the distribution details. So the survey was open to the public from February 4th until February 21st. We did a lot of outreach around this survey. We advertised through the city's listserv. We sent out information about the survey in 3 editions of the weekly Lambertville Matters email. And then we also sent out 2 separate emails reminding people to participate in the survey. We also did outreach through other organizations to try and reach some of the groups that are oftentimes harder to engage with in this type of outreach. So primarily Spanish-speaking people and elderly. And so we did this outreach primarily through Fisherman's Mark and the school district. So the school district sent out an email to its listserv, and Fisherman's Mark partnered with us to ensure that paper copies could be distributed to both seniors in town and to Spanish-speaking members of the community. Because we had heard some concerns that Spanish-speaking members of the community might not be comfortable providing their addresses on the survey, but we also wanted to ensure that all respondents lived in town. We had Fisherman's Mark validate and verify that the individual lived in town. So we were able to get these surveys anonymously through our trusted community partner. We conducted our outreach in both Spanish and English, and then we also made paper copies available not only through Fisherman's Mark, but also in City Hall. So overall, we received 488 responses from the resident survey. As with prior surveys, we went through a data cleaning process by checking for duplicates. So we did this by sorting the respondents by their names and then verifying if there were duplicates based on their name and address. Most of the time, this was just, I think, a technological error. People seem to submit them in quick succession. So we'd get a couple of responses that were identical within a minute or 2. And there were a few instances where people submitted a survey at the beginning of the survey period and then another one at the end. In those cases, we kept the most recent response. So we ended up with 442 unique responses from the residents. We also did a separate survey this time for business owners and organization leaders to try and gather information on those stakeholders' opinions as well. and we received 19 responses from that group. We didn't have any duplicate submissions there. And then in order to analyze the multiple choice questions, those were obviously pretty simple. We just ran frequencies, which we'll present here tonight. And then for the open-ended item analysis, what we did there is we had 2 to 3 independent readers from our communications team read all of the responses and independently analyze the data for common themes. Then those independent raters met to discuss what they had found and in order to ensure inter-rater reliability. And there was agreement on all of those things. So again, to sum this up, we had 442 resident respondents. So this is about 1 of every 8 Lambertville residents who responded to this survey, which we think is great. This is about a 30% increase over our survey that we did over the summer as well. So we had 429 respondents reply online, and then we had 13 responses through Fisherman's Mark, some of which were Spanish-speaking respondents. Additionally, we had those 19 business owners and organization leaders. So I just want to make a note here that the slides that we're presenting tonight show the results only for the residents. We added in the business owner and organization leaders to all of these other results, and those are available in supplemental slides. The results are consistent with the resident responses, and the supplemental slides will be available on the website as well. So the first question that we asked was, how important is the preservation of the Clausen property to you? And what we can see here is this this yellow segment is the number or the percentage of people who said that it was very important. So that's 73%. 17% said it was fairly important. 5% said not very important, and 4% not important at all. So what we see here is that there's this clear consensus that overall 90% of people who responded to this survey said that preserving the Clausen property is either fairly or very important. So just to look at what this looks like in the raw counts, what we see here is 322 people said that this was very important, 73 fairly important, 20 not very important, and 18 not important at all. The next question we asked was whether the respondents supported or opposed the city purchasing the Clausen site. And again, here we see a great deal of consensus. So 64% of people strongly support the city purchasing the site, 11% slightly support it. We see 5% neither support nor oppose, 5% slightly oppose, 10% oppose, and 5% are not sure. So again, we have, by combining these slightly support and strongly support categories, we have 3 out of 4 respondents who support the city purchasing the site. And we have 15% of people, so again, it's about 1 in 8 respondents who either slightly or strongly oppose the purchase of the site. Again, if we look at this with the raw counts, we see again that there's this clustering among people who support the city purchasing the Clausen site. Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you here.
Okay, thank you. We asked 2 open-ended questions as part of the survey, and the first one was, please explain why the preservation of the Clausen property is or is not important to you. In total, we had 394 responses. Some of the responses often touched upon multiple points outlined in the next slide. So it's, if you do the math, you're going to say, you know, it adds up to more than 394, and there's a reason, because they had 3 responses that they could do. The top 3 reasons survey respondents said that they support the preservation of the Clausen property are to preserve open green space, and an estimated 166 picked that. To preserve Lambertville's history and historic buildings on the property, 145 responded in that manner. And then to prevent overdevelopment, which several also feared would cause increased traffic, more parking issues in town, an increased burden on our schools, issues with slope drainage and flooding if developed. And there was about 107 that gave those reasons. What we have here is summarizing some of the other reasons that people supported the project. For community and public use, that would be examples would be sledding, dog park, garden, and quality of life. 68 responded in that way. Maintain the farmers market, which several noted is the only walkable source of fresh produce in town. And about 35 responded to that. When I get to the next question, there's some more input and data on relating to the farm market. Ability to increase the city's facility needs, i.e. the police, library, city hall with this space. About 20 responded to that. We would like to note that there were a small group of respondents who supported preservation without the location of city facilities on this site, or about 7 people that responded in that way. And then finally, the impact on the gateway of the northern part of the city, and 10 people responded with that. The next question we had were concerns about the purchase preservation of the site. The first one, or no, these are still with the first question. The cost, the city can't afford it, including costs for purchase, renovation, and/or maintenance, and have expressed concerns about the city's debt and overall needed expenditures, which would be building repairs, police department move, new schools, etc. And how this fits into the overall costs and priorities of the city. About 38 people responded to this. Believe the purchase will increase taxes. Estimated 11 people commented in that manner. Feel it is overpriced or question the purchase price without an appraisal, and 6 people provided this feedback to us. What we have here now is, again, talking about the interest for site usage. And we asked people to pick their top 3, the respondents. The first one was community gathering space, 265 picked that. Second is community garden, 223. And then following right behind that, hiking, walking trails, 222. Picnic tables, 129. Community greenhouse would be 111. Dog park, 105. And then recreational space would be 97. Other responses, there was a strong support to preserve and expand the farmers market, as it is including year-round operation. Right now that the farmers market is closed, I guess from Christmas to mid-April. Preserve the open space hill, including Washington's headquarters. 21 people were in favor of that. Possible space rental opportunities, 19. And some other comments that kind of go along with that thought. The city has need for community space for events, meetings, etc. Can the buildings on this property be used for that purpose? A question that people asked. And then finally, move the library to the log cabin or other location. There were 13 that responded to that. This question was really a non-Clausen property question. It was more to help the CAT as we continue, to reach out and engage residents of the city. And we asked her, how they felt was the best way to engage us or how they liked that. Office hours was about 8.6%. Community forums, 41.9, 42%. Paper surveys, 13%. And then online surveys was 89%. Whether these would change in the future when we're, the pandemic is behind us and we're meeting live, who knows? But this is where we've been basically now for the last year.
Paul, can I just add something here too? So
Sure.
These categories aren't mutually exclusive, as you can tell, because they add up to more than 100%. So people were able to check off as many different ways as they'd like to engage with the CAT as we have listed here. So.
Right. And then just to summarize what Sarah and I have presented tonight from the findings from the survey, there was an extremely strong public support for both the preservation of the Clausen site and for the city purchasing the site. And also, residents want to engage with open space on the Clausen site on that. So again, an advertisement for the CAT. If you want to contact us or learn more, you can email us at catchairs@lambertville.nj.org or lambertville.nj.org/cat. And the other thing is, if you see any, Sarah, myself, or any members of the CAT when you're walking around the community or whatever, please come talk to us. If you have ideas, if you have concerns, we want to hear, what you're thinking, because that's the only way we can then, pattern or come up with questions for a survey and that type of thing. So again, thank you very much to the almost 500 community residents and business people who responded to this. It helped a lot in being able to put this together. So thank you.
Thank you both. I will note here, I know we've got several members of the community advisory team also on this call, and I just want to take a moment to thank all of you. I know that this has been the effort of putting out these surveys to help the governing body really think through and understand where the public is on, some of our biggest questions is really important work. And it also is work that requires an incredible amount of volunteer man hours and time and expertise. And I just want to personally thank you all for volunteering your time, for doing it with such precision. I'm really impressed with how much we've been able to increase participation in these surveys. And I think that's largely due to not only your effort to get these things out here, but it speaks to the that people feel like these are important and that they are being weighed by the governing body. And I can tell you that it has been really helpful, particularly for me as we consider these, some major expenditures in the city. So thank you so much. I just wanted to sort of start by effusively thanking you guys for your time. I know how much time you guys have put in, hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteer hours.
On behalf of all the members of the CAT, Sarah and myself, thank you very much. It's challenging, but it's also rewarding.
Hear, hear. So at this time, before we open up to the general public, do the members of council have any questions for the community advisory chairs? Any concerns? Ongoing. Well, this is an open forum to speak directly to them. So. Councilwoman Lambert, you're on mute, but you're welcome to speak.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, just a question. You mentioned that there were hard copies available at Fisherman's Mark and City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, since you didn't do a mailing, so people, hard copy mailing, do you think that, or what impact do you think COVID and February's extraordinarily snowy weather had on your responses from people who, maybe aren't as connected online and, I don't know if they were going out. We kind of talked about this when we did our one-on-one. So
Sure.
I just wanted to kind of bring this to the open.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of answers to that question. So first, with Fisherman's Mark, so they had the paper copies and they were working directly with all of the congregate housing for seniors in town. So they were actually able to go and drop off copies. So I think that thankfully the snow and COVID probably didn't play a huge role there. Another thing is, over the summer, we did make paper copies of those surveys available through City Hall too. And so we didn't have to contend with the winter weather at that time. We didn't get any surveys submitted via paper copy.
Okay.
So while we always strive to do better and improve on our sample size, I don't know that this is a super significant issue at this time. That said, if anybody either in the governing body or who's attending as a member of the public ever hears of anybody who needs a paper survey and would prefer to complete it in that way, Paul and I and the rest of the CAT are more than willing to ensure that we get a paper survey to that person. So please just, anybody can feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Sarah,
you.
can you talk to me a little bit? I know that the CATS Outreach Committee and Communications Committee were specifically interested in reaching out to seniors and to the Hispanic population,
Mhm.
and that you guys did some relationship mapping in order to get this, to address that concern. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and just sort of explain to the council your thought process there?
Yeah, so our big two ways of doing outreach to those groups were through Fisherman's Mark and through to reach some of the Spanish speaking families through the school district. So again, through Fisherman's Mark, we worked with them. We worked with two different people there. So their Spanish speaking outreach person, and then the person who also does the outreach to the seniors in town, to work with them to figure out, again, so this kind of goes to the point that we touched on before about validating people's addresses without having to turn people's addresses over to the city. So that was for the Spanish speaking population. And then for the seniors in town, Fisherman's Mark does work with the, I guess, more congregate type living or senior housing. So we worked with them in that regard. And then the school district obviously has relationships with many of the Spanish speaking families in town. And so they send out an email both in Spanish and English to everybody on their listserv.
And it was my understanding too that as a charge of each member of the community advisory team was to go out to their personal networks to ensure that we received, as many responses as possible. And
Yeah.
we do have a significant number of seniors who volunteer on that board.
Yes. Yeah. So we had all of the CAT members send this out to their networks. And so this also was really useful because the CAT members were selected in part because they represent all various different parts of the community. And so this helped us to reach different groups within the community as well.
And it's an improvement over what we did with our first survey. Again, we were, I don't think dissatisfied is maybe a little too strong, but we were disappointed that we didn't get more response from the seniors and the Spanish speaking residents. And as we dove into a little bit and stuff, and that's when we decided to partner with Fisherman's Mark. The next time around, if next survey, we'll try to enhance that and do some other things. Just you learn by doing.
And we'd really like to thank Fisherman's Mark here because they were excellent partners with us, and they were really very willing to work with us on this. So big thanks to them.
And I think, to Councilwoman Lambert's, question here, the decision not to do a mailing was in part because of the tremendous cost, not just in order for us to be able to mail a survey out, we would also have to mail a return envelope with a paid stamp, which would, double the total cost to the city for survey respondents. I will note here, almost 500 respondents is a crazy survey response. And I think it would be fair to say that is more than satisfactory to get a sense of what the general, a taste for the tone from the general public.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that this sample size kind of was over and above what we were anticipating getting when we went out into the field to do this, because in our prior surveys, the one where we had the most, I think we had about 315 respondents. So we're really pleased with this. And as always, we'll continue to strive to increase our sample size with every survey we do and increase the number of people that we engage with and make sure that we're engaging with all different swaths of the community. But we think we're happy with the survey, the number of people who participate in this survey, and we look forward to continuing to engage with the public.
Yeah, I would note, this is more than 10% of the population filled this questionnaire out.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from the council, comments, thoughts. This is an opportunity for us to have a discussion. This is, as a part of the working session. So, I think it would be helpful to sort of to have a conversation, regarding the survey and where we are. Yeah, Councilman Stegman.
Thank you. Incredible job of putting together the survey, and I can just imagine the time of all the volunteers and both you and Paul are so dedicated to making sure you do the best outreach possible to get the most input into the survey. I do have just one quick question. Were there paper surveys distributed at Heritage Village, which is and the other Hibernia and the other age restricted? There's one more place.
So those are the ones where, so there were 3 places: Hibernia, Heritage Village, and then I think South Hunterdon Apartments. Are those the other ones that you're thinking of, Steve? So I believe that those are the 3 organizations that Fisherman's Mark is most tied into, or 3 different developments. And so any residents that they had contact with there would have had access to the paper survey.
So could you tell from the responses you got that you didn't get many paper responses, correct?
No, we didn't.
And that would have been a way that would have been, you would have to bring the surveys to these 3 locations in order to get. I think if you going forward, if you could expand that, and there are different, and just I cringe when I hear senior citizen, because oh my God, I'm 5 years into being one. But there is a percentage of I don't know the age of the people that are on the CAT. It's really irrelevant, but only, when you think about their universe, it becomes important. There are a certain number of people on fixed incomes here that are seniors. And I would just hope we'd be able to reach out, an extra effort to reach out to the folks that have not only raised their children here, but are now still living here on fixed incomes, just as a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because the outreach to Fisherman's Mark didn't involve just distributing them to every household there. It was just working with clients directly. But I will note that we did certainly get some responses from people who in the open-ended questions noted that they were on fixed incomes. So we did reach some of these people. I haven't done an analysis looking at mapping addresses onto these different locations like Hibernia and South Hunterdon to see if people filled out the survey online. But presumably some people who live in those developments did so. But thank you for that point about delivering the paper surveys.
And the fact that you just mentioned that there were some that said they were on fixed income, that would be really good question to capture. And was it just 1 or 2 with people?
Yeah, it was just 1 or 2. It was very small. It wasn't large enough to come through as a salient theme in the analysis that our communications team did of the open-ended question.
Thank you.
But I will note here, Councilman, that we did make a decision not to have significant questions regarding demographics because we were trying to get a sense of what the public's the sort of the general will of the public was about the acquisition of the property and whether or not the city would acquire it. Regardless of the demographics, the overwhelming consensus amongst the group of respondents was that the city should purchase the Clausen property, right? 3 out of 4 respondents, regardless of demographics, support the city moving forward on the acquisition.
But
thank you.
I agree with some of what Councilman Stegman is saying, that we did try harder this time to reach other groups that we didn't the last time. And okay, we got maybe 20 responses that came through Fisherman's Mark, but that's 20 more than that we didn't get last time.
No,
And it's a good foundation for us to improve our outreach.
no, your outreach has grown
survey to
your
them.
outreach has grown
Yeah.
tremendously. So I thank you for that. And all your volunteers. Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll add, I appreciate, like everyone else has mentioned here, that your efforts here, and appreciate the preview. So you've heard this from me before, but just to play this out for a larger audience, I guess I was, in reacting to the findings, was surprised by the overwhelming support for the purchase. That kind of surprised me a little bit. And then I guess the other thing is the attachment to the market as a continuing operation surprised me. Recognizing that it's kind of synonymous with the Clausen family, and I know they have a lot of devoted fans who go there, and they assume won't be there when this is and if this is sold. So to me, it was a little bit surprising, the continued adherence to the market after the Clausens had left.
Yeah, this isn't something that we asked about explicitly in the survey. So it was interesting that about 1 of every 3 respondents mentioned it independently in that second open-ended question about other ideas for use of the site.
Are there other comments, questions, general thoughts regarding the acquisition? I'll note here as we move forward that this is our last working session prior to the introduction of a bond for acquisition of the Clausen property. And so might be worth the council really having a broader discussion as that is barreling towards us on March 25th. Okay, then we'll open up for general questions.
Beverly, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question. Please unmute yourself, Beverly.
Beverly, unfortunately, oh, there you go.
Yeah, okay. I don't really particularly have any comments other than I really would like to see the property preserved, both for open space in the market, and I would like it to go forward.
Thank you so much for your comment, Beverly. I appreciate it.
Matthew, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Good evening, Matthew Hansen, 105 Douglas Street. I just wanted to thank the CAT for the work they've done in the survey. It definitely is, I know, a large undertaking. I just want to say I love the Homestead Farm Market and the fresh options that we've enjoyed there. My degree is in marketing, and I've done market research in the past with my degree. Personally, with that, I don't think 11% is a return I'd base a majority on, based on my past experience and knowledge. 11% only filled out of the whole population that survey. So that's one point. The other point is I want to echo Councilwoman Lambert's questions the other night to have an appraisal done. While we can't compare apples to apples with city finances and personal finances, I don't think that any of us would spend personal funds on a real estate transaction without an appraisal. This is not our personal money, but the city's money, and I think that an appraisal is wanted and needed. I want to also talk about and reiterate as a point that it's not a net zero purchase. I know the city has said that. This is the council and the administration making a conscious decision to spend this money on a purchase rather than investing the money in current facilities, infrastructure, and possibly lowering taxes once the current debt is paid down. We are making the decision to extend this debt now to purchase this rather than invest it in other avenues and channels in the city. I also have, I guess, a question, I guess. If the police station was moved to the Clawson site, would we need to pave a 2-lane road and a parking lot on this site to accommodate the cars for the police as well as visitors, as well as the traffic coming and going? And how does that fit into quote unquote preserving the site if we're paving that? Because I don't imagine we'd keep a gravel road for police cars. So I guess that's my only question. The others are just points.
Thank you so much. I'll take the appraisal question first. You know, we had spoken to two of the foremost experts on conservation in November when the council was initially considering the purchase for preservation of this property. The recommendation was to not get an appraisal. The council did feel that more due diligence needed to be done on that price. We looked at tax maps, previous land preservation acquisition that the city had done. We had members of our community for free walk through the property to ensure that it was usable for potential city use. We also had the tax assessor make an assessment on what the property value was. And then we worked with those preservation experts to sort of compile what we thought would be direct comps. I want to remind folks that appraisals are opinions based on comparisons of land that is similar. They are the reason that when you do things like, condemn property, that you get multiple appraisals is because they're opinions and they vary significantly in scope depending on the appraiser. We chose to take the advice of the experts and to compile a due diligence, which has been provided to council. And so that was the way that we made our decision. As for the question regarding the police site, the road that currently exists would need to be expanded and some parking would need to be provided.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate your comments, Mayor. Just to clarify though, I think that while you're saying you got advice from other people, basically those are opinions as well. Whereas an appraisal is opinion, you got opinions from other people as well. I think appraisal is a more structured opinion. And I think that I just support it personally. That's what I just want to say. And then I think that any of us on the call personally, if we were buying a property personally, we'd get an appraisal. And I think that when we're spending city funds, we should be doing that. So that's just my opinion.
I appreciate your opinion. I took an opinion of an expert instead, but I appreciate you giving us your opinion.
Jody, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, this is Jody Struve, 28 Perry Street. I want to echo the thanks to the CAT committee. As I understand it, there's two decisions. There's whether or not to buy the property and then what to do with the property if it's bought. And so I'm for buying the property from what I know, but I'm most interested in what to do with the property. And I had 3 questions. One, where can I find what, I've seen the description in the survey and read some other things, but I don't have a full understanding of what the actual property looks like to understand whether some of the ideas I have or members of my family or others in the community that I've heard could actually work. Could a dog park work? Could a skate park work? Could a, whatever, a volleyball court work, so I don't know. I know what the hill looks like where you sled. I know where Homestead is, but I don't understand. So is that available? That's one question. 2, what's the timeline? I understand you said March 25th, you're making a decision about buying the property, but what's the timeline for continuing to weigh in as community members on how the property would be used should it be purchased? And then what are some other ways we'll continue to be able to weigh in if the property's purchased? And then the third comment is, interested, hearing the conversation about trying to be sure you have reach to all segments of the population. I think this might be a great opportunity to gauge the youth in civic participation. And so I wondered if you might consider, if the property is purchased, engaging them with some materials that are accessible to them in offering their ideas at the elementary and the high school, even engaging the schools about how they might want to see the space used.
I'm not considered a youth anymore. All right. Well, Jody, thank you so much for your comments here. I'll take them one at a time. There are, as a part of the Clausen's advertising advertisements, there are a series of overhead shots of the property at large, as well as some maps that the city has provided of the property, the total span of the property. So if you are interested in sort of dreaming up big ideas, I would point you to both of those. The Zillow in particular has some really great overhead shots that's available to anybody in the community or out. The second is that the community advisory team and the council intend to continue to have conversations regarding the use of the site deep into the rest of this year, as we both debate whether or not to move the police to the log cabin, whether or not to put the market up as, for bid as a ongoing farmers market, and what to do with both the outside site, the actual preserved land, as well as the historic home. I'll kick it over to Sarah and Paul to talk through, we've talked about having some open community forums, ongoing surveys, but I'll allow them to talk a little bit about how the CAT's going to engage in that and how the public can continue to share their ideas.
Sure. Yeah, Jody, thank you so much for these questions and comments. We, like the mayor said, intend to continue engaging with the public to more fully flesh out what, if the city decides to purchase the site, what the site will be used for. So we kind of viewed the this survey as a beginning for understanding what people wanted to use the site for. And as we saw in our question about the outreach for the CAT, there seems to be a real desire to have these community forums. We did one of them for the design of the housing that will be built at the current police station site. And that was a really great, engaging morning. We were able to do that on Zoom. So we should be able to continue doing these community forums, even over digital platforms. So that's something that we'll plan to continue through the spring and the summer and even into the fall. And then I really like this idea of engaging with youth for community outreach. So that's something that we will definitely strive to do as we move forward. Paul, do you have anything that you'd like to add there?
No, I think you pretty much summarized it. And Judy, just to echo what Sarah said, the idea of engaging the youth, I think is an excellent idea. They
Thank
start
you.
getting familiar with that property when they're sledding down the hill, and as they grow up, hopefully they have other ideas. But that's an excellent idea, and we should engage the youth just to get them more involved in the community.
I will note here, Jody, rather, I have spent, since we have decided to move forward on the due diligence process, I spend quite a few hours of my week dreaming up what we could be doing with the site. And we've already gotten some volunteers who have turned in hiking trails, potential dog parks, community gardens, available public meeting space. So I think people's minds are churning on it, and that's a good thing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Judy, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question. Judy, please unmute yourself.
Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I just wanted to go back to the questions that the gentleman asked earlier or identified earlier. I think his point was on target that 10 or 11% is really, although it's great and a great effort was made, and I commend all the effort that was made, 11% for a city like ours isn't really that complete a response to make some big decisions with that as your basis, I don't think. And to another point that he made, which I was going to make, was we seem to be moving ahead with a fairly large financial commitment without any figuring or any discussion that's apparent on all the things we won't be doing in terms of some of the other expenditures that we face, and knowing what we've been hearing about for the last couple of years about how much debt this city is in and what a disaster it is and what a nightmare we're facing, I'm not clear on whether all of the possible grants and this and that are coming through, and so we actually aren't spending any money, and when we pay off the debt that's about to come due, we're going to have all this release of our debt obligation, and we're going to be great. It sort of doesn't sound like that, and I'm struggling to sort of get that, because I don't hear that with any of the discussion that has taken place. And Mayor, I didn't really hear you answer some of his questions, although I may have not been as alert as I should have been. Maybe you did.
So, all I can respond to for that is I'll let Sarah and Paul sort of speak to, in regards to the total survey. I think this is a data point that members of council are using. It's not what the council is basing their decision on. And I agree with you. I've been an advocate of reducing and being more responsible about about the amount of debt that the city borrows on an annual basis. And this is in direct contradiction to that. My only response to that is that this is a once in a generation opportunity to preserve a piece of land that's really culturally and historically important to our community. And I think that this survey conveys that, people do feel strongly about this property, and that while it is not the most, it does not get to what I think has been a key policy shift in my administration to reduce the amount of responsible borrowing that we do. It is important nonetheless because of the once in a generation, once in a lifetime, really, opportunity to save the Clausen site. And so this is in direct contradiction to what I have been preaching for the last 2 years about responsible borrowing, but it is simply that I think that this is too important to allow those types of policy conversations to get in the way of what I know to be true, which is the Clausen property is what helps our community. It gives our community that historic rural community feel, and it is worth spending money to preserve it.
If I may, just one more point on that. Part of what we've heard and I have been concerned about, and sort of parenthetically, I'm not sure everyone who said this is such a great idea understood that it was the reversal that you are talking about, and I appreciate your acceptance of that change in your previous point of view. But the decisions that have to be made on the fact that if it's true that our library is falling apart, if it's true that our city hall is falling apart, if it's true that all of our historic stuff is falling apart, which is what we've been told, are we going to just say, well, this was a once in a lifetime, so everything else is going to fall apart? That's a dialogue I'm seeking. I'm not asking anybody to answer that right this second, but I'm saying, people, we spend a lot of time as a city in open meetings and discussions and fora and all kinds of stuff. Nobody's talking about what are we going to do about all the things that we finally agreed are falling apart. So,
Judy, I appreciate the statement. I will note here that is the charge of the community advisory team, that I'm working with Councilman Stegman on a facilities review, and that facilities review and open dialogue and conversation will be happening. And
before the expenditure decision is made on the 25th?
No.
Right, that's where I'm trying to go. And I hope the members of council are as concerned about this sort of thing as they know people are, as we've gone through a couple of elections, and we're not going to be faced with confusion and some of the expenditure issues that we have been faced with.
Okay.
And by the way, I think
I'm sorry, we're trying to keep this to the 3 minutes.
Sorry.
This is far over that.
Mayor, can I touch upon the question of the sample size as well?
May, if I can just state really quickly here, we do have over 8 other comments that we want to get to. So if we can leave it to the 3-minute comment period, I would appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, as I have my PhD in social work, and so I had to take a lot of research methods classes in order to earn that PhD. And one of the things that we learned when we were taking our quantitative research methods classes was that typically when you had a survey like this that was distributed in this like kind of unsolicited manner, right? People didn't sign up for this survey. If you got a return rate of about 5 to 10%, that was considered really strong. So we view this as a very good sample size and return rate. So we are pleased with this. And obviously, as we've mentioned several times, we will continue to strive to reach more people with each type of outreach that we do. So thank you for that question.
I will also note here that this is, you know, about the same amount of people that voted for the fire referendum in February that had a very significant tax impact. And so just something else to keep in mind here, that when doing polling and voting, you know, outside of a couple of key elections, that that sample size is also about the number of people who are regular voters. Okay, can we get the next question, please?
Yes. Alicia, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, Alicia Lerman, 101 East Lair Track. Good evening, everybody. A couple of things. On the issue of appraisal, so yes, everybody has an opinion, but there are qualified appraisers, real estate appraisers and commercial real estate appraisers who have licenses to do that work. And I think those opinions would weigh more heavily than, let's say, my opinion or others on the property. And I think it still is prudent to get a professional commercial real estate appraiser to look at this property. You mentioned, Mayor, that the tax assessor had provided input, and I had read somewhere that Rick actually had not provided input. So I don't know how that disconnect happened. For this kind of money, I mean, and what we knew about it, I really think that this should have been on referendum. I understand now that that's not possible for this election period, but somehow I think it could have happened last year. I think it's the absolute wrong site for the police station relocation, going up on the hill and the property and any other uses. I think that's absolutely not the place for the police station to go. I also think it's a little disingenuous for the council to say that this decision's not already made. I mean, in my view, the decision's made and y'all are buying this. I don't know what your no-go would be. You haven't mentioned a no-go, so I'm assuming, especially, you know, without any other work done. So I think that you're going to go ahead and vote for it. Back when we had the meeting about the police station at the Acme, when there were, I think, like 90 people spoke, it was a very large meeting. I had raised the issue about looking at issues with the implications of the things that the school was going to do. And your comment back to me, Mayor, was that you're not in charge of the school budget and it's a separate budget. And I get that the council's only responsible for the city budget, but as taxpayers, we have to pay the whole bill. And the school, you know, one of the proposals was $36 million, another one was $24 million. And who knows what's going to happen with the level of angst between the West Amwell and Lambertville folks as to what the right decision is. The recent tax increase, this impact, and I know the calculations show a no net increase, but I have yet to see that because that's just the purchase price. That doesn't include any of the other facilities. And the school, I think it's going to be hard for a lot of residents. I also want to note that I don't think that the city has the infrastructure to support this kind of purchase. We can't keep up the buildings that we have. We can't get our snow moved. We can't get our garbage picked up. You know, and now, you know, we're thinking about buying a property that's going to have other requirements for maintenance and upkeep. And I just don't think that we're in the position to do it. while I do agree with the preservation in principle, I'm just not sure we're poised to handle it. So that's all my comments all in 1 3-minute segment.
Great, thank you for your comment.
Paul, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. Yeah, my comments revolve around things that have been echoed before, and that is the one disappointment I had in the survey was that it asked, just basically straight on about the Clausen project when there are all these other issues that are facing the town. And it wasn't ranking those issues, which was more important than the other. I mean, like the last speaker just said, school's going to be a big issue. Can we, as the taxpayers, afford to do this and the school? And the fact that our debt service is now gone, and that's going to require that additional revenue is going to have to be brought in to the tune of about $450 per average household, average tax assessed to a house. And so, yes, sure, there are a lot of things I'd like to do, but what I can afford and how I go about paying for them all factor into which ones I end up doing is what I'd like to say about that. And now I do have a question, and that is, did I just hear you say, Mayor, that the decision is going to be made on whether or not to purchase this even before the next budget's rolled out and before people have a chance to understand? Does that mean that we're going to have, we're not going to be able to renovate City Hall and the library, and that, they're going to need to be sold?
No.
So what did you say? You said that it was going to be made without any of these decisions being made, I thought.
So, Mr. Stevens, the idea that that there's an I want to be very clear here. The acquisition of the Clausen property in no way creates some sort of snowball effect where we are going to be divesting from buildings. That is an incredible leap, and it is not true. And I'd ask that
I didn't say it was
about the way in which you ask questions in the public that might further confuse members of the public, as this is already a complicated, the acquisition of property is already complicated. The city is going to have a first hearing on the budget, the first hearing on the bond to acquire the Clausen property on March 25th. The public hearing for that acquisition will be the last voting session in April. We will have already heard the introduction of our budget prior to that. The larger facilities conversation will not be decided at that time, either in our budget or in the question of the acquisition of the Clausen property.
Okay, thanks, Mayor, but thank you very much. I wasn't trying to imply one way or the other. I was just stating that these issues are out there, and at times it seems like the Clausen property decisions being made independently of some of these other things that come into play. That's all I was trying to say. And it did sound like you'd said something to the effect that this decision was going to be made sooner. I'm glad you cleared up the timeline, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Okay, Mayor Fall, council members, Bill Neely, 3 Ferry Street. A little bit about myself. I'll have to note for the record that I've recently been appointed as an extra, so to speak, with the zoning board of adjustment. So you can filter what you hear from me through that. But I'm speaking, for myself. As a resident, I wholeheartedly support this. I think we only need to look at what is happening right up in Stockton with everything that's going on with the former Stockton Inn, to realize that, you know, opportunities to kind of preserve historic sites for the public well-being are rare and important. And if left to the private sector, there's not a lot of control. I'm a homeowner, and I look at debt. There's bad types of debt, which would be, you know, taking out an equity loan to pay off, you know, a jaunt to the Caribbean. And then there's good types of debt, which is to take an equity loan to improve, you know, my home is something I can age into. I'm going to be 60 this year. I'm looking forward to retiring here. You know, I'm looking forward to the city doing what it can to make as much of the site accessible to those of us who, you know, will be aging into living in Lambertville. I would urge you to think about, as much as possible, public-private partnership, especially for the market. The market has been a great joy. It's one of the few places I can walk for groceries and fresh produce. I hope even as I get into my 70s, I can still do that. The people who work there are wonderful. I think it's an opportunity to, you know, create something that harkens to the market and the farm, but that may have to be done as a public-private partnership. Other uses for the property, I think, is great. Again, I would stress, you know, skate parks and dog parks are all very cool. I think there's, other than the tow path, which with the bikers is frankly a little challenging, you know, even at my youngish old age of 60 with bad knees, it can sometimes be a little bit daunting. So think about, you know, how you're going to purpose portions of the site for activity, you know, that really is sort of accessible and a calming experience for everyone. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Bill, I appreciate that. Just to be clear here, you know, one of the things that we've discussed on multiple meetings here is that the city does not want to take on the burden of the maintenance of either the maintenance or administrative side of running either the building where the current farm market is, nor the historic home. And so the goal for us is to, in what you're calling a private-public partnership, is to bid out those leases for those sites to private owners or other public entities that want to use those sites and maintain them. The goal here is to, as Alicia Lerman mentioned, we are already strapped for maintaining multiple historic buildings. We, you know, the city has no interest in running a farm market. If we move forward on continuing that use, we will do so by leasing the building and allowing that as a prevailing use. Okay, next question.
Louis, please state your full name and address into the record, and please proceed with your comment or question.
Lou Tobis, 42 Coriel Street, and involved in several commissions and committees over the years. The city historian. My concern is preserving this property. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton. This property is part of the original land grant for the entire area. It's probably the most significant property in the area, just not Lambertville, Delaware Township, West Amwell. It needs to be preserved. And my concern is once it's lost, that's it forever. And people are talking about different things, and having worked for the state and the county and for different organizations, I think 11% response to a survey is absolutely phenomenal. I've been involved with several things, and if you get 5%, 6%, that's significant. So I think the community has responded to this. And people talking about the surveys should consider highest and best use. Highest and best use of this area, if it's not preserved, we all know what that will be. And that'll be townhouses. And there goes the history of Lambertville. people come to town and like the town because of its history, the significance. And I think that needs to be preserved. It's something that is precious to us, and we need to do the best we can to keep that going.
Thank you. I do hear a little Scotty running around in the background, Blue.
Yeah, he's ready for his walk.
Well, I appreciate you holding him back so that you could make that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Good evening, everyone. Evan Lyde, 9 Arnett. I'm calling, or guess I'm calling in because I do have a couple questions about whether or not this is something we can afford. I undoubtedly think that preserving this land is very important. When I filled out the survey, I did answer it that way. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily in support of the entire project. I do have significant concerns about obviously preserving this land and then building a police station on it. To me, I don't see how those go hand in hand. And when you look at the CAT survey, you know, clearly people are very concerned about overdevelopment and they want to preserve this. And I don't see how you can do both those if you're going to put a police station there. I think our taxes in Lambertville have gone up significantly. I know mine personally have gone up over $1,000 in the past 3 years. So to me, this is something we really need to think about. Can we afford it? And I just think this discussion is moving too fast. So thank you.
I appreciate your comment. We negotiated an extremely long due diligence period in order to have this conversation. A normal commercial sale of the Clausen site, of a site like the Clausens or any site, is 90 days. We negotiated a 6-month agreement in order for us to be able to have an extended period of time to really consider whether or not there was a significant financial detriment, to do the due diligence on our environmental, to answer questions about whether or not adaptive reuse of these buildings were possible for any city facilities, so as to not overdevelop the site, but actually maintain the same historic view shed as we currently hold. And those are the questions that we're trying to answer right now. So, you know, we are bound by a contract with the owners of the property to consider these things, but we gave ourselves half a year to have those conversations in order for us to have a robust conversation with the community. And this survey is just one of those options, but we've been now talking about this for, you know, about half of our, or a little over half of our due diligence period.
Art, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Yes, good evening, Bart Thurber, 53 Lambert Lane. I just wanted to go back, thank you very much, because actually, Mayor Fall, that's consistent with what you've been stating. I'm just looking back to November 10th, 2020 from the minutes on page 9 from that meeting. And it specifically talks about how not overdeveloping the site and maintaining the historical and cultural significance. But just before that, it also references, and I'm just reading verbatim here, before January 1st, 2021, to have a hard number on the entire cost of this adaptive reuse of the property or alternate option at that time. 2021 will continue to do, we will continue to do our study and wrap up with due diligence by the end of April, which you've just mentioned. The goal is to have clear costs associated with multiple options for the new home for the police site, separate from the preservation piece. And my only question is, you know, this is 4 months ago. I understand, I can only imagine the complexity and how much hard work has gone into this, and very much value everyone's contributions here. But I just want to know, with 3 weeks to go before the first reading of the ordinance, when will we have those hard numbers?
Thank you for that, Bart, and I will take full responsibility and culpability that the selection process for the experts specifically on our engineering and architectural side took far longer than I expected, and that I made those comments in direct conflict with members of council who foresaw those complications. And advised against, you know, that January moonshot timeline. So I will take full responsibility that while I thought that it would be possible for us to appoint through a not fair and open process, a architectural firm in December, we were unable to appoint one until late January, which put us a month behind schedule. We expect to have, those experts have been appointed. They've been working diligently with the council on any alternative ideas, as well as the adaptive reuse of the log cabin on that site. I actually received their recommended plans this evening. They're going out to a cost assessor this week, and the council will have that information before the 18th.
Matthew, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Good evening again, Matt Hanson, 105 Douglas Street. I just wanted to echo Paul Stevens' comments about the facilities plan that may be coming from Councilperson Stegman, and also in the future. My concern, I guess, for council, and I guess for Councilman Stegman and Council President Taylor, is if that finds that we need to invest in our current facilities, will we need to bond for that? What will we do if those current facilities are not adequate for what we need, or we need to spend money? Will that be more bonding we have to do, or how we spend? And I'd like, again, Councilman Stegman and Council President Taylor to kind of respond to that, how we deal with that if that facility study comes back.
And of course, Councilman Stegman and Councilwoman Taylor are welcome to respond as well. I do just want to note here that the public tax impact graph, which we provided to the community, assumes a $350,000 to $400,000 of annual capital expenditure year over year. So that when we say that this particular, I've heard from multiple members of the community now that we're sort of not thinking about this in context. That's not the case. We expected not only this bond, but also 30 years of tax impact, including somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000 of ongoing capital expenditure. And in fact, Cindy, I don't know if I can share my screen here. Give me one moment. I just want to bring a conversation that our tax assessors, our financial advisors, this is, we have two of these here. These are projections of our total outstanding debt payments year over year, assuming a $4.1 million acquisition, which is the acquisition of the Clausen site, as well as a over $1 million investment in the police site, with $350,000 of annual capital expenditure year over year. And you'll note here that those numbers continue to go down. That 1.43 number is the total amount that we're currently budgeting for our operating expense and payment. As long as it doesn't go above 1.43, right, it doesn't have a direct tax impact. And so you'll note here that even with responsible debt service, expecting some significant investment in capital costs year over year, that there isn't an ongoing capital expenditure, a tax impact with that responsible spending. The same is true also for a $500,000 annual borrowing capacity. So we do have the capacity to continue to borrow responsibly and to invest in this site and the police facility, while still investing in either repairs or other facility needs as we move forward. So, Councilman Stegman, happy to hear your response.
Well, we haven't started looking at the buildings again. I did have concerns that Mayor and I had discussed early on about the must-haves and the needs of these buildings. And so we're going to be looking at it again from that aspect of it. And we really won't know how much the needs are going to cost. So, part of the charge is to determine what those figures are going to be, and then address how we're going to pay for it. And as the mayor had recently said, I don't think I can't project about how long it's going to take to accomplish what we're going to set out to do, but it all depends on how much it costs and how many years, and start scheduling some of these repairs incrementally. So I will know more when we finish this, going through the buildings, actually, and see and get a handle on what these buildings need going forward.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Council President Taylor, if you'd also like to respond.
No, I don't have anything to add, really. I'm eager to get the facilities review done. I haven't been for a long time, but I would have made the comment that you made, Mayor, that we are already anticipating additional bonding to make sure we can take care of our existing facilities. So, short of having that in hand, I don't have much more I can say about it yet.
Great. Thank you, council person Segment and council person Taylor, for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
Tina, I think we're going a little quick on the draw with removing folks. Just moving forward here. Can we get the next question?
Yes. Stephanie, can you please state your full name and address into the record? Then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, Stephanie Moss at 12 Delavan. First of all, Paul and Sarah, I want to congratulate you on a response rate on a survey of 11% or 12%, depending on how you look at it. But you also have to look at the fact that Lambertville has a population of 3,822 residents. So that's your sample size. You got 400 and almost 500, which is 11 or 12% of that. Of those, 18% of those are under 19 years of age. So I don't know if to the point of asking about having the schools and the kids answer, that would increase your response rate. But if you take them out of your response rate, you're looking at a 15%, which is a fantastic return on something that's just been put out there. So I want to congratulate you on that response rate for those that were questioning some of that. Personally, I would rather see the Clausen farm purchased by the city and given other than developed condos and townhouses. So that's me coming from my side. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Tina, can we get the next question?
Yes. Michelle, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Jane.
Good evening. Thanks. This is Michelle Harris. I'm at 26 Church Street. Just a nod to the CAT and Sarah and Paul. I am a member of the CAT and I appreciate their leadership and all of the input we've gotten from the public. So thank you for that. And also in the vein of disclosure, I am a member of the CAT. So these are my personal opinions and don't have necessarily to do with the work that we've done there. Although it has exposed me to some great thought leadership and data, obviously. First of all, to the question about, was this the optimal timing of, a previous caller raised the optimal timing. Why didn't we kind of do this research before? Why isn't the facilities, it would be optimal, yes, to have the facilities study done prior to making these decisions. But the property went on the market when the property went on the market, when the Clausens decided to list it. And the city had to act in the context of that timeline. and wherever we were with the facility survey or not, and other actions. I just want to remind people that this was a private seller putting it on the market when they did, and we were in reactive mode from the beginning and had to make some pretty quick decisions. Also, yes, there's a cost to this. I'm kind of looking at the big picture personally and saying, yes, I'm a very detail-oriented person. I want to see all the nickels and dimes. But when I pull back and I look at the big picture, the question that I come up with is, can we afford not to do this? What's the alternative? Because deciding not to do this at this point, the reality is this property is for sale and it will sell. And if we look at what's happening in our river towns, you know, to the points of previous callers, this site will be developed in a way that the city and the citizens will not be able to control. So we'll be able to effectively use our planning boards and our, permitting process and things like that. But is big development what you want to look at on that site forever? This is just one of those opportunity costs. I grew up in a very tight family. There wasn't a lot of money, but I will say that when my parents had the opportunity to say, wow, this is an amazing opportunity, whether it was going to school or going on a trip or whatever, there was an exception. And to say, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We're going to figure out how to make this happen. So that's kind of the position I'm coming from. I agree with Lou and his lovely recollection of what that property has been in the past and the need to preserve it. I also agree with the caller who made points about, there's bad debt versus this is a good investment, right? And so now it's just the dollars, but in the big picture, does it make sense? And I like the point about public-private partnerships. Regarding the market and the allegiance to the Clausens, yes, there is that, and to the pie that is currently available at the market, but also to only the second source of fresh produce that we have in town. So it is a unique market. We don't have a lot of marketing opportunities in town. Somebody made a point about preservation of versus building on that site. We are looking at, the open land funds and grants that the mayor has explained before. And I like the idea of leveraging just the buildings, the infrastructure, including the buildings and the road that's leading up to the log cabin and so on. And we will be limited to some degree because of the funding we're pursuing to make sure that the footprint stays a preserved footprint. The last,
Michelle, I just want
to say we are past the 3-minute mark.
Okay, I have one question. So I have my last comment is an invitation to anybody who has ideas about improving the response rates for surveys or anything else. We're all ears. Let's get even more people in. My question is that I believe this idea of the appraisal has come up. I don't disagree that an appraisal could be a good idea, but Mayor, could you remind us, please? I think you talked last week in a meeting about the cost of the appraisal, and I don't think that's come up in this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We've, as a part of putting together the budget for this site, we already are planning to do multiple appraisals on this site in order for us to be able to get grant funding. Those appraisals will be specifically around the open space, not around the market value of the site. And so I just want to sort of clarify that. We spoke with multiple experts to get an idea of what those costs would be. Again, if you're going to get one appraisal, you have to get multiple appraisals, and they're about $10,000 a pop. They take about 3 weeks.
Thank you, Mayor. So to everyone who's suggesting doing an appraisal or appraisals, I would just remind people that has a cost. So there's a natural tension inherent there. So thank you.
And I think, to that point, the question is really whether or not that data is actionable, right? So the Clausens city has come to an agreement with the Clausens on the market value of the property, the amount that we would be willing to pay for it. If if multiple appraisals came back at a much lower valued rate, would that indicate the actual market value of the property, right? So we understand that there's significant public support to purchase it at this cost, at this price, right? It's a generally publicly understood and known price. And so that was, if those appraisals come back, we'll have spent multiple thousands of dollars at that point, somewhere in the realm of $20,000 to $30,000 for those appraisals. Would that be actionable data? Is my
I'm sorry, Mayor. I fear that we may be confusing folks. For the open space purposes, we are required to get at least 2 appraisals.
That's correct.
Okay. For a purchase, we are not required to get any, and if we get 1, we are not required to get any more than 1. So you just said we're required to get at least 2. So I just want to be clear about that.
So I would say we're not required to, but my strong, so we are required for any of the grants that we receive to get more than 1 appraisal. The reason that you do that is to get an average, because these are, while they are verified opinions.
But that's for open space, which is a separate, so the people who are emailing and calling in on the meeting are not talking about that. And I think we're all clear on it, but I don't want to muddle the issue.
Certainly, my argument here is that there is a reason behind those requirements for multiple appraisals, and while no appraisal is required in order to acquire this property, my strong argument would be that we should use the same logic. If we get 1 appraisal, we should get multiple appraisals and get the mean of the what appraisals feel like the value of that property is.
Okay, I disagree with that. And I don't want to leave the public thinking that we're obligated to do that. That's your opinion. That's not my opinion. Sort of irrelevant because we didn't do it prior to already being under agreement, but I think it's important that we be very clear about this. On the appraisal front, I agree with you. If we were to do one, is it actually actionable since we're already under agreement is the right question. I also think an important question just in appraisals in general is the appraisal has to be done based on an end use. And so for any appraisal we would have done in the past, we may have wanted to get a multi-phase or multiple appraisals to look at potential, the information the research that I personally did was based on the underlying zoning, which would allow for 10 or 11 new units on the site, depending how you look at it. So, I understand the concerns actually quite well, but I don't know that having an appraisal now prior to us moving through the open space process is a very useful thing to spend money on.
Thank you for your comment. And Michelle, thank you for your comment. I think we have another question.
Gina, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Just to echo what others have said, thank you, members of the CAD and members of council for all your hard work on this. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time. The preservation piece of this proposal sounds great. It's warm, it's fuzzy, it's awesome. It sounds like a lot of people are in support of it. I personally, I think it sounds good. I have some concerns, a few of which have already been mentioned tonight, so I'm not going to reiterate them. I have some questions about the use of the site for the police. I got on this call a little bit late, so I may have missed it. I don't know if it's been specifically iterated how you're going to decide whether to use the site for the police station or not. I'd be interested to know exactly how that's going to be decided. Also, early on, there was conversation and discussion about alternate sites for the police station. I've not heard anything about that for a while. I'm interested to know if those sites are out there, where they are, what their status is. Also, earlier this year, I attended a couple meetings where the mayor mentioned that you're going to be passing a townwide affordable housing ordinance. So I'm curious to know how that townwide affordable housing ordinance is going to impact our affordable housing mechanisms, including use of the police site to address the 5 units. That's kind of what's like putting all of this in motion with moving the police station to the Clausen site and yada, yada, yada. So I'm interested to know how that's going to impact all of this. Also, finally, I'd like to know what other avenues other than surveys the CAT has taken to reach the public. So thank you very much.
Paul and Sarah, do you want to answer the last question first, and then we'll go through?
Sure. Yeah, so in addition to the survey, so specifically to the Clausen site, we hosted 3 office hours. We did one in the evening, we did one on the weekend, and we did one during the day. We didn't get any attendees to those while they were open and advertised. We also have our website with information on it and with our email address, and we have received emails from multiple members, probably at least a dozen members of the community over the last couple of months about the Clausen site as well.
And Sarah, I think it might also be worth sort of going through the other means by which you guys have contacted people, including design vetting.
Oh yeah, sure. So prior to our efforts around the Clausen site specifically, we did a couple other surveys. We had a dozen office hours over the summer, and we did get some people attending those. We also did a public design vetting day where it was a 2 or 3 hour meeting one Saturday morning where we met over Zoom, and we had different images, and we broke out into breakout rooms to have a more community-based discussion about the design for the mixed income housing on the current police station site.
Thank you. Okay, to answer the other questions, I'm hoping that I've caught all of these. We had multiple other potential opportunities for alternate sites at the police station, none of which have been realistically viable. The goal was to have a choice where to put this police station. As it stands now, we don't. We have actively pursued multiple other sites throughout the community that are either privately or publicly owned to little avail. And that has been over the course of a little over a year of very significant grunt work from members of the council, myself, as well as our consultants. So that's where we are on alternate sites. In terms of the decision-making process for the police site, we have been working with within the council to vet out potential options of how this is sort of going to play out. We are at this point required by our agreement with the with COA as well as with the court to move forward on the sale of the police site. That, as you said, sort of got the ball rolling on the move of the police site, and we are working towards introducing that to the public, but at this time it's not on the agenda for a final decision. I think that, and the citywide affordable housing overlay is an issue that specifically Councilwoman Taylor requested that we work on as a part of our retreat and some policy goals. We have some questions about how that will affect our affordable housing agreement, and have asked those questions through our affordable housing attorneys to some of the experts. We're awaiting more information.
Excuse me, Mayor, I just want to ask a question relevant around the redevelopment site. Since we didn't get any responses to our RFP, can we talk about what that means as a next step? And also kind of, I guess I'd like to know, how it impacts our date with the court that we have in, I think, mid-May?
It does not impact our date with the court. We have to move forward with the work to sell this site, as we've discussed in our executive session. We are required by the court to make a good faith effort to sell that site. The goal was to do this as an RFP to provide more power and choice to the community. Although that RFP, while folks were not responsive to that RFP, the site has not yet come on for sale, which may change the interest in the market.
Thank you.
Again, as we discussed in our executive session. I think we're ready for the next question, Tina.
Nancy, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Yes, this is Jeff Campbell, 31 York Street, and I just had a few comments. First, I wanted to echo what Lou and Michelle have said about the importance of the site, the historical uniqueness of it, irreplaceable. And I don't really think anybody disputes that, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. But I also wanted to address a few things that were said. One, and it's been touched on by a number of the speakers, but the inadequacy of the survey response. I have 30 years of experience, both in social science surveys and marketing surveys, and an 11% response is a huge response and cannot be dismissed as being insubstantial. It's significant. Secondly, and the data is new to me tonight, but 64% of those respondents strongly support the city's purchase of the property. Almost 2/3. In this day and age in American politics, you don't get 2/3 of the people in favor of anything. And one comment was made about prioritizing issues. 64% strongly support the city's purchase of this property. To me, that speaks for itself. It is prioritizing. So I think we shouldn't lose track of that. And then thirdly, between the commitment to open space, which seems really broad-based in this community, the commitment to historic preservation, 33% of the respondents identified that as important. And the desire to prevent overdevelopment, which of course this acquisition would also contribute to, it seems to me personally to be a no-brainer. So I applaud the CAT's work in gathering this information, and I applaud City Council for creating the opportunity for all of us to hear about what's going on and to weigh in.
Thank you.
Alicia, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Alicia Lerman, 101 East Blair Track. Is there a timeline? I'd like to get a better understanding of the timeline of the police station sale and when that decision would absolutely need to be made for relocation. It doesn't sound like there are other potential sites at this point besides the Clausen, although I think, as I mentioned to Sarah, I think we could put the police station potentially at Lilly Mansion and move the library on the Clausen farm. But I'd like to get a better sense of the timeline of when the police station is going to be put up for sale. I know we don't know what the market would be, and when the drop dead decision would need to be made about where to put the police station, just to know how many degrees of freedom there are, or how much time there is in figuring out what to do with the Clausen property. I kind of feel like, the Clausen property is a decision that's already been taken. I'd like to really understand whether the police station going up there is also a decision that's already been taken, or whether there really is a true timeline of having alternatives.
So the answer is that the city is, we are right in lockstep with our agreed timeline with the court, which is, the RFP had to go out at the first quarter. We have to make, so the council has some responsibility to make a decision about how we move to sell this property. Moving forward, what's a responsible and responsive way to do that? Is it just putting a for sale sign out, or should we hire a broker as a part of the sale? That's a question that the council will be debating in terms of the mechanism of sale, but the sale, the sort of putting this site up for sale is imminent. In terms of the timeline of making a decision about the about where the police station goes. The agreement with our police department and with the public was that we would have an answer to a final home for the police station, even if it required a transitional period, that we would have a final agreement, we would have a final home for the police and a way to get there prior to having them evacuate the site.
Well, of course you would have to have that before they had evacuated. But what would that timeline be? I still don't know.
So
I
it
mean,
depends on the negotiation of the sales. Many sales have contingencies. For instance, the sale of the Clausen property, there's a contingency for the Clausens to stay at that site for, I think it's 60 or 90 days. You know,
so
that's a
how long will it take?
Excuse me, I'm speaking. When we make that sale, the negotiation of contingency will be a part of our decision making within reason. And, you know, very likely would have to run that decision in terms of the total amount of time by the court.
So if the building went up for sale at the end of the quarter in, 22 days, the end of the month, and somebody were to let's say we got lucky, somebody were to make an offer that we liked, and we could maximum maybe get 6 months, but, and that would include relocation. So you basically have 3 months, 3.5 months to have a final decision about where the police station is going. Is that fair?
I think that this is entirely speculation. I've laid out the timeline that we've been clear with the public, which is we will not move the police until we have an answer to where the police will be permanently housed.
If you're allowed to do that, right? I mean, depending upon when you can negotiate with the buyer may not give you that choice.
I think that, again, this is this is unhelpful speculation.
It's not speculation. I'm just trying to get a feel for whether, we have really viable other options for where the relocation of the police station is. We also talked about getting like a project manager who would manage this project to ensure that we could get everything done and managed. How are we doing with that?
We have not moved forward on hiring a project manager, as we've been able to manage the project thus far under budget and on time. Mr. Opal?
We own the police site property, so any potential contract to sell would, we would be able to some extent dictate the terms, so we don't have to worry about somebody telling us when to sell our property. I just wanted to make that clear that, it's not, that's something to be negotiated, and, the city's not going to take demands from people as to when the property is going to be sold.
Although ironically, outside of the context of our affordable housing agreement with the court and fair share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
I do want to note here before Paul begins speaking, we are starting to see repeat commenters. We appreciate everybody coming. We do want to be respectful of people's times and allow folks, the council, to also continue to have that discussion. So I just want to ask that if you are a repeat commenter, that you, new questions, comments, and try and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. This should be real quick, Mayor. The question is, building, Ms. Lermer actually said a while ago about maybe using the library building as the police station, moving the library up. Is that still being considered? Because you talked about relocation options not panning out. I just wondered if that was still a possibility, assuming we get the Clausen property.
We haven't considered a significant possibility because the library has a significant more amount of square footage And actually the goal, one of the stated goals for the library is to increase their total amount of space for both programming and for book storage. So that would be in direct contrast to what the library is looking for. If they were to move into a new building, they would lose space. Right now, I'd like to remind folks, we have a 1-for-1 book policy where we are bringing books in and having to remove other books, even though Jen Sirek has done an incredible job. They just actually went through a huge book, basically an entire archival process to go through what we really have and what's needed in the community. We are in want of more space, not less.
Thank you very much. That's all I wanted. That was the question. You answered it. Thank you.
Gina, please state your full name and address into the record, and please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, I just have a quick follow-up question. Based on the answer to my question before and some of the comments that were made, it does seem like this is the only site that's available right now, at least for the police station. So I'm just curious to know how the existence of a police station on the site would impact the availability of the site for other uses. Like, for example, it seems like a lot of people really want to see a continuation of a farmer's market like Homestead, which is open all the time, at least, through the warmer months on the site. But I'm wondering whether or not that would be possible if there's a police station on the site. And so it seems to me like maybe that question needs to be answered prior to all of this other, brainstorming and excitement about what the site could be used for. And I'm just hoping that I could get a response to whether or not it'd be possible to have those two uses, if not others, on the site at the same time.
Yes, thank you so much for your question. Yes, indeed, it is possible. The Clausen's log cabin, which is tucked away, is where we're looking to do an adaptive reuse project to put the police there. That would not impact in any way the use of the rest of the property for outdoor space, extra communal gathering space, the use of the farm market, the use of the historic home for any of its potential uses. The goal is to that adaptive reuse to have almost no impact to the historic view shed, and for it not to compete in any way with other potential uses of the site.
So the traffic for a grocery there wouldn't be an issue for the police.
All being considered as a part of our engineering and architectural study. That's sort of the question of feasibility, which we are answering now with those experts. But we are very deep into that feasibility study, and there is no significant concern, although there will be, as mentioned previously in this call, there will be some infrastructure to make that possible. But again, the goal is to maintain the historic view shed and to have this site used for other for those other works. And we think at this point that seems feasible. Thanks for your question. Oh, just really quickly, Gina, I'm sorry, you didn't state your name and your address. Would you mind doing that for the record?
Oh, sure. Nobody has been, but yeah, Gina Fischetti, 116 Clinton Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we are out of questions. Are there any other questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing, which I've already communicated to Councilwoman Lambert, but at our last meeting at the special session last week, we had a discussion about who basically shared folders. And I stated fairly emphatically that I was sure Councilwoman Lambert had access to something that it turned out she did not. She had access to a file that I had shared with her, but not to some other file. So I just wanted to publicly apologize.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councilor. Don't worry about it. It happens. It happens. Thank you. Both of you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I called Councilwoman Lambert afterwards and profusely apologized as well.
You did. You did. Thank you both. Thanks, both of you.
I want to make
Okay.
one quick comment, if I could, Mayor. A couple of folks have made a point that I think is fair, and I want to make sure we're not too cavalier in how we respond to that. And that's the notion of the overall tax burden of residents. So if you look at the dollar of a tax payment that landlord residents make, I forget what it is, 14, 15, 16%, or cents of that dollar go to pay the city. We're the collector of the tax, but we're only responsible for, ultimately a small portion of that. But to the residents, the overall burden of fire, county, school, municipal, and so forth, it's all a part of what people pay. So I'm going to make sure we're not too cavalier in how we respond to that question, because I think we're all trying to be mindful of what the overall cost burden is. I mean, in some ways, there's an irony here that a lot of this has been set in motion by a difficult court decision to require us to do affordable housing, which everyone supports, but leaves us with some challenging, decision making. But if we raise taxes too much, the irony is that we make more housing more unaffordable for more residents. So I think we're mindful as we spend taxpayer dollars, but I want to make sure that we're not cavalier, because it's to the resident of the city, it all matters. We control a small portion of it, but it does all matter. I just want to make sure we're clear in how we answer that.
Thank you, Councilman. And I saw Councilman Stegman.
Yeah, just to comment on access to files just for a second, just to set my record straight, is I didn't have access to the folder until I asked for it as well. So I appreciate the the opportunity for Councilman Lambert to also have that access. The second thing is for the CAT. Did you put anything in the survey that referred to the cost at all, or was this just, promoted as what people thought we should use it for? Were they aware, other than coming to a meeting and reading about the cost of the acquisition? Would that have been a plus, a minus, with the way the survey was responded to?
So we included, as part of the survey, background information. So the intro to the survey included links to all of the information about the finances, and included some of the high level takeaways about or from those documents. So yes, that was provided.
Oh, good.
Thank you for that question.
No, thank you for clearing that up for the public as well. And this is for Bill. The question of appraisals have really popped all over everybody's email in the past couple of weeks. Contractually, if we pursued the appraisal, is there any restrictions in the agreement with the Clausens, how we would handle that?
There is a section of the purchase and sale agreement that requires certain due diligence materials to be kept confidential prior to closing. So I believe an appraisal, or for example, any of the environmental due diligence that we're doing right now would fall into that category. There's not a lot of information that can be kept confidential that involves a public entity, but certainly, contractually negotiated issues that relate to proprietary information are an exemption from public records. So, while the agreement itself that sets forth those requirements is a public record, some of these due diligence materials, including an appraisal, wouldn't be.
So what you're saying is that the public wouldn't see these, correct me if I'm right, we would see them, but the public wouldn't see them before the closing anyway, correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, so for things that would need to be kept confidential during the negotiation period, after closing, do those things then become public record or not? Appraisal, environmental?
Appraisal would, I'd have to look into the environmental.
Okay.
Not 100% sure on that. But the appraisal would be, the appraisal, the reason that it's exempt from disclosure is that it's two things. It's advisory and deliberative material. So, it's material that you use prior to making a decision. And I guess the closing would be the decision point in this context. And also it's proprietary information. Public entities can't disclose information that would influence market decisions or a bid or something like that. And if we released an appraisal prior to closing on the property and, something happened to where the city decided not to go forward, it could potentially cause some issues, with valuation going forward. So, that's why those materials are confidential prior to closing.
And Bill, I think it might be worth it just for the public, because you sort of skated by this. There's also an exception in the Open Public Meetings and Open Public Records Act specifically around the acquisition of property
In the open
public entities.
Yeah, we've referenced a number of discussions that have been had in closed session. So there's a specific exception in the Open Public Meetings Act that allows the governing body to discuss matters like sale or acquisition of property, in closed session. And it's for, these exact purposes. There's a lot of materials that we're discussing that are, exempt from disclosure and, attorney-client privilege, for example. So, that's why there's been a number of those conversations behind, in executive session, obviously, after the process plays out and whatever resolution happens, those minutes will be made public. But, until that point, the exemption applies.
Mayor, we had a lot of discussion about this, and as Councilman Stegman noted, we got a couple of emails. I think I got 5 or 6 emails on this. I think others did as well. And I think people are hearing that there's information that we're not permitted to share, and there's also an appetite for information. We've probably talked about some things that people, helped edify their understanding of this process just tonight. I think it makes sense to try to put it in one place because we're talking, and bless you. But it's to me, it makes sense to try to pull this together so that we have an informative document for the public to share information that we're permitted to share, maybe even talk a little bit about what we can't share or why we can't share, what the purpose of that is, just so folks have it in one spot so they can, sort of digest it better.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you'd be willing to work with me on that. I'm happy to put something out to help edify the public in any way that we can as we start to move forward on a decision like this.
Look in your inbox. Yep.
Okay, great. So with that, then, are there any more comments from the council regarding either the survey or the question of acquisition?
Well, if I could just touch base on the appraisal. So just one additionally, since it has been such a not combative, but there's been a lot of some pushback on it, I would say. And so if we were to get appraisals, maybe, and since they can't be made public until after the closing, perhaps the taxpayers would want to make sure that the council had as much information as possible on the price on the appraised price of the property. And that's where I think that there's some frustration on the side of the appraise or not appraise. I just thought I would get that out there.
Sure. I would just like to remind folks that the agreed upon price is the agreed upon price.
Yes, yes.
So
yeah, we
unless the
are
council-
contract bound on that price.
Correct.
No,
So
I
regardless
realize.
of the information that we might gain or not gain from assessing the property, this council still has to make a decision on whether or not it is worthwhile to acquire this property at the price we've agreed to.
Yes.
Okay.
And we also have, there's also information that's available to the council. There's a memorandum that, it's not an appraisal, but it does set forth some methods of valuation. And specifically that was used, back in November when this was initially being discussed. So that was something that appeared to be helpful.
Can you restate that, Bill? I'm sorry.
There was information prepared by the city's tax assessor late last year prior to moving forward with the initial ordinance authorizing the city to, enter into the purchase and sale agreement. So that I guess based on the discussion now, that information should be available to the council at this point. It's probably something that should be reviewed before any other discussion as to appraisal or value goes forward, but it is helpful materials, and it's something that as part of the council's due diligence back in November of 2020 was relied upon before going forward.
So
I would
let's just,
appreciate seeing that. Thank you.
so Bill, let's just clarify then, it came up, I think, twice tonight that there is word on the street that that assessment did not happen, that information was not provided to council. And I just want to state for the record that it was indeed provided to council.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Any other comments from members of council? I appreciate it.
I just like to thank Ward for having that earlier statement he made about us proceeding with what we can share and what we can't share. Once that's out there, our hands are tied. The council's hands are tied in certain things that they can discuss and can't discuss, and any input from Bill at a subsequent meeting would be really helpful to get that out. And thank you for working on that with the mayor, Ward. Appreciate it.
Okay. Can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
I'm sorry, a motion to adjourn rather.
Also moved.
All right, Councilman Taylor for the first.
Second.
Also seconded, yeah.
Okay, a unanimous second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks everybody. See you on the
Good night,
18th.
everybody.
Night.
Take care.
Good night.